Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Prabhupada ki jai. So this evening we'll be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and we'll be reading from the first canto, which is entitled Creation, chapter 12, and we'll be reading from verse 3. So if everybody could please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, I'll just read the Sanskrit and then the English translation and then the commentary purport. Tadidam shotam ichamo garitum yarimanyase bruhina shadayananam yasya jnanam adachchukaha. We all respectfully wanted to hear about him, Maharaj Parikshit, to whom Shukadeva Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge. Please speak on this matter. Purport. Shukadeva Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge to Maharaj Parikshit during the remaining 7 days of his life. And Maharaj Parikshit heard from him properly, just like an ardent student. The effect of such a bona fide hearing and chanting of Srimad Bhagavatam was equally shared by both the hearer and the chanter. Both of them were benefited. Out of the 9 different transcendental means of devotional service to the Lord prescribed in the Bhagavatam, either all of them, or some of them, or even one of them, are equally beneficial if properly discharged. Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami were serious performers of the first 2 important items, namely the process of chanting and the process of hearing, and therefore both of them were successful in their laudable attempt. Transcendental realization is attained by such serious hearing and chanting, and not otherwise. There is a type of spiritual master and disciple, much advertised in this age of Kali. It is said that the master injects spiritual force into the disciple by an electrical current generated by the master, and the disciple begins to feel the shock. He becomes unconscious, and the master weeps for his exhausting his store of so-called spiritual assets. Such bogus advertisement is going on in this age, and the poor common man is becoming the victim of such advertisement. We do not find such folk tales in the dealings of Shukadeva Goswami and his great disciple Maharaj Parikshit. The sage recited Srimad Bhagavatam in devotion, and the great king heard him properly. The king did not feel any shock of electrical current from the master, nor did he become unconscious while receiving knowledge from the master. One should not therefore become a victim of these unauthorized advertisements made by some bogus representatives of Vedic knowledge. The sages of Naimisharanya were very respectful in hearing about Maharaj Parikshit because of his receiving knowledge from Shukadeva Goswami by means of ardent hearing. Ardent hearing from the bona fide master is the only way to receive transcendental knowledge, and there is no need for medical performances or occult mysticism for miraculous effects. The process is simple, but only the sincere party can achieve the desired result. Om Jnanativedandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Kritavachalam Pangam Langate Girim Yakipatamaham Vande Shri Gurundinitaranam Vancha Kopadubhisha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gauda Bhaktivinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, as I'm sure everybody here is aware of, that it is the beginning of 2022? Just joking. I didn't forget. 2022, and usually in the beginning of the year, of any given particular year, people tend to be more reflective, more thoughtful, maybe thinking of how to change their lives for the better, how to improve their lives in different ways. And therefore so many resolutions. It's a very popular thing all over the world, making resolutions. And in some ways that's good, especially if somebody wants to make you could say real progress or spiritual progress in their life. But making progress, any type of progress, it doesn't happen just automatically. There has to be a lot of determination and a lot of endeavor and a lot of energy in that, whatever one's trying to achieve. For example, our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, in this particular purport we just read of his commentary, he was telling a particular story of a guru and a disciple, and how this particular guru injects some type of spiritual force into this disciple by electrical current. And the disciple began to feel the shock. And I think it was by kind of placing his hands on the disciple or whatever, feeling some shock. And then he said that he became unconscious, the disciple, and the master weeps for exhausting his store of so-called spiritual assets. So, Srila Prabhupada's making the point in the purport that you don't hear such, how did he say it? What did he say? Folk stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this particular book, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavat Purana, it is one of the main authoritative scriptures for followers of Krishna. So you don't hear it, such stories in this particular book, Srimad Bhagavatam. But Srila Prabhupada makes the point that you hear of the story of the great king, Maharaj Parikshit, and Shukadev Goswami. And Shukadev Goswami speaking to the king. And in this way, he attains transcendental knowledge. Not by some automatic type of magical transmission. So, if we want to have a positive change in our lives, also, it's not going to happen by some automatic process, means some magical process. It means that we have to put a lot of energy into what we're trying to achieve. Now, when people are thinking of bettering their lives, because we're in a spiritual place, the temple, so we're going to focus on spiritual topics here. If people are trying to better themselves spiritually, there's a particular process to do that. Because sometimes people think, well, I could just make it up, right? I could just make it up. Or they take that which is mundane or worldly, and they call it divine. Just like, for example, there's a particular saying, which maybe some of you have heard, but the saying is, the voice of people is the voice of God. That's a particular saying. Now that doesn't make any sense, and I'll explain why. Because the voice of people are people, and God is God. They're separate. That's one point. But another point is that we see in history, just because a lot of people thought something was a good idea, doesn't mean it was a good idea. And what to speak of it being a good idea doesn't mean it was the voice of God. For example, and sorry for the graphic example, but in some parts of the world, I don't know, maybe to date, but it's considered acceptable, it's considered logical, it's considered the thing to do to cannibalism. And specifically, in particular parts of the world, it's to perform this cannibalism with one's grandfather. That's considered okay, that's considered good. A lot of people accept that. Or in this particular country, for example, some years ago, not so long ago, but some years ago, it was accepted by a lot of people, slavery. And it wasn't just slavery, because it's not just slavery that people keep people as their slaves to do things for them, and to kind of keep them as an animal. But a lot of other things went on under the name of slavery, murder and so many different things, because people thought that these other people were theirs, so they could do whatever they want with them. So that was considered publicly accepted, largely. Of course, changed, but so that's another example. Another example is wholesale cow slaughter. That's also accepted largely around the world. I mean, that hasn't really changed much, unfortunately. But so all of these things, how could we say that, oh, it's the voice of people and this is the voice of God? A lot of things that are just harmful for people, harmful for nature, harmful for us. How can we say it's the voice of God? So one particular person, because these sayings, they come out throughout history. The voice of, for example, the voice of people is the voice of God, or whatever it is. There's so many little sayings. So this saying came out at a particular time in history, and then one man, philosopher or thinker, he objected to it. And what he said, it's a good quote, and so this is a quote, "And those people should not be listened to who keep saying, the voice of people is the voice of God. Since the righteousness of the crowd is always close to insanity." So the righteousness of the crowd means the moral compass or the moral fiber of the general, common, materialistic crowd is always close to insanity. So why should we say that the voice of people is the voice of God? So that's what he's saying. So then what's the alternative? That, okay, we want to be happy, we want to be satisfied, we want to be peaceful, we want to have a meaningful life. These are good desires. Hare Krishna. Joey, welcome. Hare Krishna. So these are good desires. So what are we supposed to do? So the vice of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the vice of the Bhagavad Gita, is to stop following the concoctions of humans for our happiness. To stop following the concoctions, the mental concoctions of so many different imperfect humans. And the idea is to follow the prescription or the solution or the path that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or that God has chalked out. That's the idea. Dharmam tu shakshad bhagavat pranitam. So spiritual knowledge, the path of righteousness, the path of spirituality, it's chalked out by who? Krishna. And this is the failure of modern civilization. The failure of modern civilization is they haven't followed Krishna or authentic scriptures. And someone would say that, hey, well, what do you mean it's a failure? How are you saying that's a failure? What do you mean? We have our iPhones. We have our, what do you call, laptops, right? We have our airplanes. We have indoor plumbing. We have so many things, right? What do you mean we have electricity? How is it a failure? Well, largely we're failing in the happiness department, right? People, maybe not all of you here, but spiritual people, but people in general, they're failing in the happiness department. In other words, the whole world is in a chaotic condition. Confused, lonely, angry, selfish, right? Just on and on and on. And why is that? Because they haven't followed Krishna's particular path. And then people say that, okay, you spiritual people, you Hare Krishnas, you're saying you have all the answers, so why don't you solve the problems? So we'll say that, yes, sounds kind of proud, but yes, we do have the answers. But in order for people to benefit, they have to follow. Without following, they can't benefit. Just like Srila Prabhupada was one time in India. Our spiritual teacher was in India, speaking about Krishna consciousness to many people. And one man came up to him, an Indian man came up to him. Of course, he's in India. Mostly Indian people are there in India. But anyways, so a man came up to him and said, Swamiji, only you could save me. Only you could save us. And at this particular point, Srila Prabhupada said, because he would answer differently, different times, but this particular point he said, yes, that's a fact. But then he said, but the question is, are you willing to follow? So, in other words, the guru or the teacher, they could help us, or you could say the different injunctions of the Srimad Bhagavatam or other Krishna books, they can help us tremendously. They could help us collectively, they could help us individually, but are we willing to follow? So, for example, how can the Srimad Bhagavatam help the world, the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam? How can it solve? There's two very prominent problems. Hare Krishna. Jai. Govardhan. Mukunda Kishore. Yeah, so there's two very prominent problems in the world, and it's been going on for a very long time with no solution so far, even though they tried very hard. So what are those two problems? One problem, very prominent throughout the world, the whole entire world, is this problem of racism. To hate somebody on the basis of the color of their skin. It's a huge problem. And people hurt people over it. People kill people over it. All types of different things go under the name of racism. It's a huge problem. Still, movements fighting against it, right? So that's one problem. Now, how can the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam, if it is widely propagated and if it is widely followed, how can it solve that? Well, the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam says that by nature, we're not the bodies. We're not these physical bodies. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Najayate mrite va kadachan, that the soul is eternal. And the soul doesn't have a particular color. The body has a color. Just like if I was to say that, right here, we have our Bhakti Daniel here with a gray beanie on, and he's wearing all white. Of course, his chaddar's like off-white, but you get the idea. So if I was to hate Daniel, I say, oh, I hate you. I actually don't hate you, but if I was to say that, I hate you because you wear all white, right? And I wear this, kind of orange. Now that wouldn't make any sense, because why am I hating somebody just on basis of what they're wearing? It's very strange. So similarly, the idea is that the bodies, they're like different outfits, right? Different color outfits. That's all. And to hate somebody on that basis is just doesn't make any sense and just strange. So the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam explains where the soul and the body is the covering of the soul. And therefore, we shouldn't hate anybody on the basis of the color of their skin. And aside from that, we all have the same common Father, Krishna. Now, if that was widely accepted, and what to speak of fully accepted, then there is no racism. And we have, like in our Mayapur, India, Sridham Mayapur, outside of Kolkata, very beautiful project we have there. We're building a very big temple, TOVP. It's going to be one of the biggest temples in the world. They've been building it for many years, but now there's Hare Krishna people, there's devotees. They fly in from all over the world. You have many devotees from China, Russia, America, a little bit, Africa, Europe, so many different places. And they're all chanting and dancing. They're all chanting and dancing. They're all chanting Hare Krishna and dancing. They're all getting along perfectly together. Even though they're from different backgrounds and so on. So now another problem is people fighting on the basis of being of a different religion. It's a huge problem. In America, it's a little kind of maybe more controlled than other places, maybe silenced, maybe it's more in the mind or something. But in many countries throughout the world, it's a huge problem. A lot of physical clashing and killing and so on the basis of being of a completely different religion, different beliefs, and sometimes even in their own religion. Means, like for example, the reason why there's so many different churches. You know why the reason there's so many different churches? I grew up here in San Diego, and I also grew up from a Christian background. But the reason why there's different churches is because they all have different beliefs, practically speaking. Like some followers of Jesus Christ, they say Jesus Christ is God, like absolutely. And some say, no, he's not God. He's the Son of God. And then some Christians or followers of Jesus Christ, they'll say, you need a guru to connect you to God. And some will say, no, you don't need a guru to connect you to God. It's direct, means you and God. And on and on and on, like that. There's a particular holy day, right? Most say Sunday, but there's one group, practically I think, that says Saturday, namely the Seventh-day Adventists. So on and on like that. Some heavy emphasis on Mother Mary, right? So they have these differences of opinions, and sometimes there's fights about that. Also within Islam, they have idea that, of course, there's the Prophet Muhammad, and there's, anyways, my friend was telling about it because he's from a Muslim background, and he was saying that there's another prophet. Was it Abdul or something? Ali, yeah, there you go, Ali. Thank you. Ali. So one group there's a strong emphasis on Muhammad as the main, right? And another group is a strong emphasis on Ali, and there's big clash over it. And then also there's the Sufis, right? The Sufi, the mystic, right? And as far as I understand, both these groups, these Muslim groups, they don't like the Sufis. And the reason they don't like the Sufis, they think the Sufis are offensive. And the reason being is because the Sufis want to become God. That's their goal. It's in their songs and it's in their type of meditation. They want to merge and somehow they become Allah, right? Become one with Allah. So there's the other ones are thinking, oh, this is bad. And then of course there's Hindu and Muslim clash and so many. So now if everyone was to understand that, hey, we're all souls here, and hey, after all, we're all sons and daughters of God. And God doesn't like when the sons and daughters, just like an order, we have some mothers and fathers here in the audience. I know there's some. The mother and father doesn't like their children to fight, what to speak of kill each other. The mother and father, that's the last thing they want their children to do is fight. So similarly, Krishna, the Supreme Father, Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, Aham Bija Pratapata, says that I'm the seed-giving father. He doesn't want to see anybody fight, what to speak of this extreme violence. So if people of different religions were to realize that they're souls and that they're all part and parcel of Krishna, Mamai Vangsho, Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, they're all part and parcels of Krishna, then that would solve that problem as well. And sometimes atheistic people, or people who are leaning towards atheism or leaning towards agnosticism, or they say, oh, I don't want anything to do with religion. Look at all the countries in the world, they're all fighting like cats and dogs and extreme violence, and all in the name of religion. Therefore, religion's evil. I don't want anything to do with it. Now, just because somebody stamps themselves a Hindu or a Christian or a Muslim or whatever it may be, doesn't mean they're actually loving God or following the ultimate commandments of God. That doesn't mean that necessarily. So in other words, all these religious wars, maybe the last real religious war was the battlefield of Kurukshetra. That was actually the religious war. Means Krishna was encouraging Arjuna to fight because on the other side, Duryodhana and Drita and all these different personalities, they were actually evil. They're actually like authentically evil. And if they were to take over, they take over the whole world, and then it's just a bunch of crooked people ruling the world. So they tried not to fight many, many times, Krishna, and there's a whole plan, right, Mahabharata, not to fight. But then eventually they were so adamant, Duryodhana and all the different, that whole group to fight, then okay, let's fight. And then there's a big battle, and then afterwards the solution was there was a great saintly person in charge, Maharaj Yudhishthira, which is good for the citizens. So that might have been the last religious war, real. But all these other religious wars, they so-called religious wars, people they're fighting over, you're this religion, I'm that religion, okay, let's fight about it. Extreme violence. Or a big one is fighting over land, wanting to, it's very common. It's like you're bullying, it's like big bullies. Countries could be like bullies, right? There's a big bully of a country or a group of people stronger, and they say, okay, we want that land. Come in and take it by force, fighting wars. And then sometimes they say, oh, in the name of religion. So, but practically all of these wars have actually been fought on the basis of, as our spiritual masters say, the skin disease. thinking I'm the body or particular religion and so on. So in this way, the Srimad Bhagavatam provides some solutions to these two very big problems, racism and clashing of religious people. It completely solves that. And also, it also solves the problem, the happiness problem. It's actually a big problem, right? You probably got people all over the world typing into their phones and their computers, how do I be happy, right? And then so many things coming up. It's a big problem. Means we have a need to be happy, or people have a need to be happy, and it's not being fulfilled. So in other words, that could be very problematic. Because from this state of unhappiness, people tend to do a bunch of just insane things, harmful for themselves, harmful for the world, harmful for other people. So, in this particular time, the beginning of 2022, again, we shouldn't expect some automatic, you could say, solution to our problems, or you could say, we shouldn't expect it to happen overnight. That, okay, hey, well, I went home and I read the Srimad Bhagavatam, I read the Bhagavad Gita, or I did some praying, or I did some chanting, and the next day I woke up, and I still feel the same. But it's gradual. The sun, right? We all know the sun, Surya, or how they say in Espanol? Sol, yeah. What about Hindi? Same, Surya. All right, any other languages? Oh yeah, Russian. How do you say? Sonsa. Sonsa? Okay. So Sonsa, Sol, Sun, Surya, we're all familiar. It's rising every day to our vision. But it's a gradual, means it's dark, especially imagine if there's no lights. I mean, like no electricity. How dark it is, but anyways, but it's dark. You go out to the desert or something, it's dark, or wherever you're going, it's very dark. And then when the sun is rising, gradually things become lighter and lighter, and then eventually everything becomes lit up. So similarly, spiritual realization is like that. It's a gradual rising of the sun, and everything becomes clearer, 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 and then just lit up. So, or as Srila Prabhupada also one time said, he said about his books, because the Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses. It's a lot of verses. And Srila Prabhupada wrote a commentary or a purport on every particular verse up until the 10th canto, because anyways, he left at that point, 1977. But still, he made a lot of progress. One thing is he didn't sleep that much, so that helped. 3-4 hours a day, but but he commented on it, that because people would praise him. Oh, Swami, you made so much advancement in writing your books, because it's a big work actually. To write is quite an endeavor. If anybody's tried to do it, even just to write 100 pages. I mean, so. So yeah, he said that these purports or these commentaries are my devotional ecstasies. In other words, they're outpouring of his heart. But what he said in terms of making progress, he said that drops of water wear away stone. So you have a drop in water, drop, and it'll wear away stone. Stone is extremely, it's one of the most, strong elements, but it's It's difficult, right? It's rock hard, right? So, but drops of water wear away stone. So in other words, day by day, if we are putting time and energy into our spiritual lives, then there will be an effect. There will be a change, transformation, positive transformation. And whatever problems we do have, or that we're facing, collectively or individually, they will be solved by the spiritual methods of Krishna consciousness. Okay, so does anybody have any comments or questions? Somebody's raising their hand. Did you have something? Oh, okay. Okay. Yes. She has a question.
No.
Do you have it?
No, I didn't have a question, but I just...
Or a comment?
Yeah, thank you
Okay.
for that stone analogy. It's a good inspiration that a rock hard stone, but if you do a daily practice, eventually you'll break.
Yes. I'll repeat it. So she said that she liked that analogy of the stone, that if you just drops of water wear away stone, that if we put in the time and energy, then there'll be a positive transformation. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's one of my friends said that to make spiritual progress, to make progress in our lives, our spiritual lives, we have to put time into it. And time in two ways. So one is time every day, to put time into it every day. That's one way. Just like for example, we have to drink water, right? Cheers. Cheers, that's kind of... Not cheers, but I'm going to drink some water. Old habits, he said. Well, I joined the Hare Krishna movement when I was 18, so... anyways. So, so we need water to, keep the body going. We need food to keep the body going. To nourish the body. And everybody here in this particular room and all throughout San Diego and to the world, this is a common fact that people are aware of, right? They need food and they need water to nourish the body. But what about the soul? Or as Jesus Christ said one time, man, which also means woman, it's a particular way of speaking, but people, they don't live by bread alone. It means the soul it can't live by bread alone. In other words, that if people are just eating bread or chapatis or whatever they're eating, bread, chapatis, or some type of, they can't live by that alone. In other words, they can't be satisfied with that. It's not going to satisfy us. Yes, it will nourish the body, it will keep the body going, but we're not the body, so we can't be happy like that. So every day, nonetheless, every day nourishing the body. But so in other words, every day we should nourish ourselves, means the soul. And how do we do that? How do we nourish the soul? There's many spiritual books like this, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, different books. I've made it through many, many books just on the basis of reading a little bit each day. I made it through many books because drops of water wear away stone. And then what to speak of having, dedicated, study time, if possible. And that will actually, it will actually help us a lot. Just like some people, what they do is they pick a verse or they pick some type of wisdom quote and they meditate on that for the whole day. They read it in the morning and then they try to keep it in their mind. Read it in the night, read it in the morning, read it in the night, and then try to keep it in their mind as a meditation. So, yeah, reading something. And also chanting. Chanting is the main process for this particular age. Hari Nama, Hari Nama, Hari Nama Eva Kevalam, to chant the holy names of Krishna. That's the main process. So to do that every day, to have some beads, some japa, right? Japa mala beads, which are there in the gift shop, or we could give them to you. So to do that every day is also very nourishing. And then also to hear class is also very nourishing. We have a broadcasted class here every morning and night, I think, practically. This is being broadcasted right now. When it's being broadcast, you don't exactly know who's listening. So anyways, whatever. Whoever's listening, Hare Krishna. Also, when it's being broadcasted, you got to be careful what you say. So, I mean, of course, you have to be careful what you say in general, but yeah, drops of water wear away stone. So therefore, it's a good time, right, beginning of the year, to try to find some spiritual practices we could do on a daily basis, and drops of water wear away stone, and then see the result. So thank you. Okay, Farouk, you had a Farouk son? Daniel, I mean.
Thank you, Balarama Prabhu. My question is regarding to what you said about how we have like this clothing, right? I know you don't hate me, but you said we have this like body. It's like
Yeah.
the clothing we wear, and some
Yeah.
people don't like it based on like what they see and stuff. So how does one look past the body, the clothes they wear, the false ego, and how can they see that the soul within inside each person be equal poised with everyone that they see?
All right, thank you. Well, once Srila Prabhupada was, he was in Los Angeles, and he was very charming person. I mean, of course, he was so many wonderful qualities he had, but I could say transcendentally charming to people. And he just liked people, actually, to say the least, or he loved people. So he was on a morning walk in Los Angeles, and he was just through his transcendental Krishna consciousness attracting the people he was dealing with. Means they were all their hearts were melting in his presence. So later on, after the walk, one disciple of his said to him, Srila Prabhupada, he said, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada, it seems that everybody loves you so much." And then Srila Prabhupada said that, he said, "Yes, because I love everyone." So that was his answer. So he was pointing out that it's reciprocal, that he loves people, therefore people love him. So we kind of get what we put out there. But and why did he love people? Because he understood that we're all actually connected. Mai Vangsho, Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta. We're connected on the spiritual level. We're all part and parcels of Krishna. Now, how do we realize that? Because at present we may not realize that. How do we realize that? Well, we realize it mainly through the chanting of Hare Krishna. And hearing, we have to hear, hear, hear. As this particular purport says, that it's not by automatic magic or something, like this guru and student, but it is by, Srila Prabhupada says, ardent hearing, very attentive hearing. So you could say that this, to be troubled by the different bodily conceptions of life, or the racism, or whatever it is, it's like being in a sleeping state. Or to not realize that I'm a soul and other people are souls. And it's like being in a sleeping state. So okay, then we need to wake up from that. So how do we wake up? So when we're all sleeping, we all sleep at night, right, usually? Unless it's New Year's Eve or something. People sleep in the morning. We had a nice chanting party, went out downtown. We stayed out from 10:30 to 1:30 in the morning. Anyways. But when people go to sleep, when we all go to sleep, we generally, right, a lot of people, they use their phones to wake up, alarm clock, or sometimes they get an alarm clock. But there's some type of thing to wake us up. And especially if we're going to an important meeting, like we're going to catch a flight or something, right? We want to make sure we wake up. So, but the point is that the sound wakes us up. All the other senses, for the most part, are just sleeping. But still, the ears are active or responsive. So, if somebody says, "Hey, Daniel, wake up! You got to go catch your flight," right? Then you're likely to wake up, or they, on your door, "Hey, wake up, wake up." So, similarly, through the chanting of Hare Krishna, through the engagement of Krishna consciousness, it's like, specifically through sound, it wakes us up. So in other words, all of the truths that we should be basing our lives on become clear, become realized through the chanting of Hare Krishna. Sound. So, yeah. All right. Yes. I wasn't expecting a question or a comment from you, so I'm happy that you're gonna. Anyways.
Isn't soul? We talk about soul. So and so has got a very good soul, or so and so has got a bad soul. I mean, why do we relate soul to goodness and badness? Isn't soul something which is consciousness, which is an observer?
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Yeah. You have some more? Yeah.
I just want to know why do we connect the soul as a good soul and a bad soul?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That's a good question. There's the soul is pure by nature. So it is but when it comes in contact with the material mind and also the false ego, the false sense of self, and so on, then the soul becomes covered. Or you could say the original pure consciousness becomes covered by material desire, materialistic desires, kama. And it's not just referring to sexual desire, but it's referring to all different types of material desire. So the soul becomes covered. And there's different examples of the covering. Let's see if hopefully I could remember, but I'm still kind of recovering from that New Year's Eve chanting. I chanted for 2 hours straight. I was leading. I was also hitting the mridanga, so my voice kind of got a little, and also my hand. And also, I'm just kind of, anyways, I'm still recovering. But the three coverings are, one is, it's like the embryo covered by the womb. The embryo covered by the womb. It means it's a very heavy covering. The consciousness is very heavily covered. And practically one's in many ways helpless. Not completely, but. And then there's the covering of examples like dust on a mirror, which is better. Oh yeah, and then there's the one smoke covering the fire. So anyways, these are different, you could say, levels of covering. So when one is like an embryo covered by the womb, it means that Priya's holding her stomach. She's got a baby there, but that's right. No, that's good. But then if one is like an embryo covered by the womb, then it means that spiritual desires are practically absent from one. Just there's like no spiritual desires there. They're practically helpless, right, in the material pool. And then if it is covered by like dust covering the mirror, it's a little better. The spiritual desires are present, but not very strong. And then if it's like smoke covering a fire, that means the covering's the least. Now, Srila Prabhupada commented on this. He says that the human being, by nature, the soul and the human body, by nature, has this fire of spiritual desires burning. Of course, it could be covered, but by nature, we all have a little bit in us. So the idea is to fan the spark or to fan the fire, to make the fire of spiritual desire grow stronger. So anyways, now a soul, when they say, oh, it's a bad soul, good soul, all souls are good because they're all from Krishna. But this is a kind of terminology. I mean, maybe some people think, oh, it's bad soul. It was good and then became bad. Like sometimes in the Christian theology, in the Christian theology, they have this, right? Lucifer, he was an angel, right next to God, but then he started to envy God, want to be like God, or wanted to take God's position, and then he's cast down. He becomes Lucifer, Satan, the devil, and then he's just completely always bad, right? He never becomes good again. Now, the Vaishnava philosophy is that, or the Bhagavat philosophy, or the Bhagavatam philosophy is that all souls are good, and even if they seem like they'll never become good again, they just become so covered, there's always a chance, and they could always be reinstated in their natural state. So in other words, there's no eternal damnation of the soul. So yeah, it's an important thing to note that ultimately all souls are good. Some are just a little more covered. So, all right, okay. Any other last question or comment? No? Okay. Okay, so now we'll have a kirtan from 7 to 7:15, and then after that, please grab a box. We have some boxes of prasadam, or boxes of dinner for all of you. They cooked. So, yeah, please grab a box before you go. All right, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.